TPR.
ग्रूमिंग से सख्त नफरत है ना, मतलब एक तो खैर ही इज़ क्वाइट ओल्ड नाउ, ही इज़ लाइक 13 years old, showing no signs of slowing down, बस खड़ूस पर्सनालिटी बढ़े जा रही है. You can't cut his nails, कोई ग्रूमिंग नहीं कर सकते, कोई सफाई ज़्यादा लाड प्यार करोगे तो उसका भी एक टाइमर होता है, सही है. और उसने हमें ट्रेन कर दिया है कि
वो तो हर बिल्ली का होता है ना.
I don't know,
कौन सी बिल्ली?
I don't know, I see videos of cats who are nice to their owners. तो इसको आप करे एंड देन पहले तो ये काट लिया था कि अच्छा बस हो गया, अब ये बस सर का झटका देता है एंड आई एम लाइक हाँ मैं ट्रेन हो गया हूँ. तो हम भी ऑब्सेसिव पाकिस्तानी पेरेंट्स, हम सफाई तो होके रहेगी. हमने बताया शायद मैं तुम्हें ना, गैबापेंटिन मंगवा ली थी हमने. गैबापेंटिन इज एन एंटी सीजर मेडिकेशन आई बिलीव, और सम सॉर्ट ऑफ लाइक हैवी एस पेन किलर. वो हम इसको ना खिला देते हैं. और ये होता है
clear, he does not need it except for the fact that
the only reason we give it to him is because then he's a bit less like resistant to grooming. अच्छा it's like you know पुरानी फिल्म में होता था ना, अमिताभ ने ज़्यादा शराब पी ली तो अब वो ओवर द टॉप लड़खा रहे हैं रोड पे, ये हो रहा है वो. इसके साथ असल में ऐसा हो जाता है, ठीक है, until you start grooming him and his anger fights through the drugs. थोड़ा ज़्यादा करो फुल एक्टिव वापस से हो जाता है. लाइक दिस इज नॉट सपोज्ड टू बी पॉसिबल. तो कल इनके साथ ये हुआ है, तो फिर भूल जाते हैं ये, मतलब सफाई करो बशोर खाना दे दो, खाना ही ऑल ही केयर्स अबाउट इज फूड, विच खैर तो हो सकता है मुझे अभी जाना पड़े. और इट्स अ बिग प्रीएम्बल टू बिल्ड अप टू दिस कि कल इनके साथ जुल्म हुआ था, तो अब वो फीलिंग गिल्टी, जबकि जुल्म भी हमने किया था और हम ही करते हैं. लेकिन अगर ये खाने का शोर मचाएं तो आई माइट हैव टू गो. हाउ इज योर लाइफ?
My life is good, no animal problems. The kabutars have been
evicted.
हाँ वो तो जा चुके हैं. हाँ कबूतर evict हो चुके हैं, वापस नहीं आए. अब वो हमसायों के घर आ रहे हैं, which is fine. अब मेरे घर में मकड़ियाँ बहुत हैं, so अब मैं भी Instagram पे देख रहा हूँ कि भाई कैसे दूर करते हैं इनको.
अच्छा तुम वो वाले ब्रेन वॉश नहीं हुए कि spiders are our friends and they eat other bugs?
देखो अब अदर बग्स तो मेरे पास ज़्यादा है नहीं. मैं यहाँ पे हूँ कि अगर मुझे ज़रूरत ना हो तो मैं उसको एक ग्लास के अंदर बंद करके ना बाहर छोड़ देता हूँ कभी कभार. लेकिन अगर ऐसी जगह हो जहाँ ग्लास मौजूद ना हो तो फिर मैं ज़्यादा रहम नहीं करता. हाँ लेकिन इस वक्त इतने 2-3 दफ़ा ऐसे हुआ है कि मेरे घर में 2 दरवाजे हैं, तो मैं काफ़ी दफ़ा बैक डोर से निकल जाता हूँ. एक दिन मैं फ्रंट डोर से निकला, मैंने कहा व्हाट इज दिस रेजिस्टेंस.
नहीं
just walk straight into a spider web.
Wow.
तो मैंने कहा नहीं Halloween decorations अभी नहीं लगाई मैंने.
Does Seattle have big spiders?
नहीं छोटे वाले.
अच्छा ये सारे छोटे हैं, but like the web was enough to cross your door frame.
मतलब इतना होता है कि जैसे डोर फ्रेम समझो 6.5 फुट का है ना, तो 1.5 फुट तक तो नीचे आ जाते हैं.
Wow.
So like my face is right in it.
Wow, amazing.
एक दो दफा मेरे हमसाये कह चुके हैं कि प्लीज जस्ट beware, there is a spider web on your door, don't want you to walk into it. And so I have received this warning and still done it.
Do they have this issue also, or are you particularly being targeted? अच्छा, they're not, spiders racist नहीं है कि पाकिस्तानी बंदे कर जाएंगे.
मैंने पूछा नहीं, बट ये उस तरह का सवाल है कि आदमी पूछते हुए डरता भी है.
अगर उन्होंने हाँ कह दिया तो
फिर मैं क्या करूँगा. यानी कि अगर वो जवाब दे सकते होते तो फिर आई डोंट नो इफ आई एम इन अ कंफर्टेबल स्पॉट वेयर आई डू वांट टू आस्क, यू नो.
या नो वाकई वो वाली बात जो थी ना कि तुम कहते ग्लास जार में बाहर छोड़ देते हो. देयर इज अ कॉमेडियन हियर, क्रिस कैंट, आयरिश कॉमेडियन. उसका था कि उनके घर में चूहा आ गया और चूहे का भी यही सीन था कि भाई मारो नहीं, पकड़ के कहीं छोड़ दो. ही इज लाइक बट मैं तो नहीं चाहता कि वो वापस ना आ जाए. तो ही बिगिंस दिस लॉन्ग स्टोरी ऑफ मैंने जो गाड़ी में डाला, वी वेंट फॉर ड्राइव, राउंड अबाउट गए, राउंड अबाउट के 5 चक्कर काटे, वो डिसोरिएंट हो जाए, ये ना वापस आ जाए, होल बिट. तो
किडनैप ही कर लिया उन्होंने.
या बट खैर थैंक यू फॉर रिमाइंडिंग मी दैट अक्टूबर में भी हमें करना था. मैंने कहा अभी तो किया हमने. ऑल माई सेंस ऑफ टाइम हैज़ कोलैप्स्ड.
पिछले 2 महीने से अब मैं कह रहा हूँ इस महीने पहले करेंगे.
Yeah,
20th तक
yeah.
नहीं जाएंगे, लेकिन in my defense we did a lot of listening this week.
अच्छा, yeah,
मैं और आप
aggressive.
भी, और हाँ पीछे मैं 60-70 और गाने भी सुन चुका हूँ, तो I feel
Okay.
like there is a healthy level. I am now caught up with the industry, I would like to say.
Right.
Only for people to release 10 more albums next month.
Yeah, but
यार
I think the
ये
theme
album
of
craze
this,
जो है ना,
the theme of this episode is people are doing albums again. It
हद हो
seems.
गई. Why do you think this is happening?
Yeah, I was thinking about why it makes sense for this to happen, not why it's happening now. But I was thinking, यार अगर लोगों को concerts करने हैं ना, तो it's hard to schedule performances or tour dates. This might not be relevant to Pakistan, but it's hard to schedule tour dates on the back of just singles. ठीक है, you need to have some body of work, and then हम उसको promote करने अब एक concert करेंगे. पहले ऐसा होता था. I'm assuming that could be part of what's happening here again, but I don't know, क्योंकि concerts हो रहे हैं क्या पाकिस्तान में अब? हाँ, I think हो रहे हैं ना. You said कि
Concerts
शुरू
हो
हो
रहे
गए
हैं,
हैं.
हाँ. I don't know if this is necessarily relevant. It might be because जैसे एक ही वो एल्बम टूर था ना हसन रहीम का, जो उसने एल्बम निकाली और फिर टूर किया, ठीक है. But that album was not
Last year.
one of his last year. But this was not one of his well-known albums. Like his well-known songs, like his best songs are his singles, not that album. नौटंकी नाम था ना एल्बम का. अब उसमें उसने कुछ ज़्यादा वीडियोस भी नहीं निकाली, मैं 2-3 वीडियो निकाली थी पूरे एल्बम में से. सो एक तला अंजुम की एल्बम थी. आई डोंट नो इफ ही डिड अ टूर, बट ही जस्ट डज अ लॉट ऑफ कॉन्सर्ट्स, आई अज्यूम. So I think that there is an element of portfolio building here, which is basically that everybody is feeding off of each other. अब record labels आ रहे हैं, artist management services आ रही हैं.
Oh, you think there's a business side to like, अच्छा.
I think so. And like, I don't even know if it's good business, you know. I know it is business, but I don't know if it necessarily, we know that it like pushes people over. But it's like one of those things where people are now gunning for bigger, more corporate deals with the artist agencies. तो अब Sony आ रहा है, और ये आ रहे हैं, अब बहुत सारी artist management services आ गई. You can see them on like Talal की वीडियो में Believe Music.
Why are they coming to Pakistan? Because all these new artists are popping up and they're big on streaming services and people think there's value there.
Yeah. I think so. Spotify and I, like with all these companies, I guess they all feed off of each other. Right? Spotify आया तो अपने record labels ने कहा हम भी आए ना आए. Artist management services जो इंडिया में थी वहाँ सुन रहे हैं ना, उनको नजर आ रहा है कि एक market है, थोड़ी आ सकते हैं. So I think it's a number of market forces. But then all the artists are like, अच्छा वो तुम भी EP बना रहे हो, अच्छा मैं भी EP बना रहा हूँ, अच्छा मैं अपनी album पे काम कर रहा हूँ. So I think it's also just a sense of like, this is what we are building. And there is probably an element of वो तो है ना music circles में कि like an album says more than just a song. Like you have more of a set of ideas. I don't know if that works well in this market anymore. मतलब कौन album
I was
back
wondering,
to front सुन रहा है?
I was wondering what your opinion was on this. कि like, are albums considered still in Pakistan perhaps to be like the sign of a more mature artist? कि भाई हम सिर्फ singles नहीं निकालते, ये देखो, it's like a big body of work and like, you know, a big project, which might be an outdated idea.
But my question, I think people can look at it and be like, अच्छा इनके तो बहुत गाने हैं, ठीक है चलो, you know, like मतलब लोग जाके सुनते हैं कि भाई इनके कितने गाने हैं, 2 गाने 3 गाने हैं, अच्छा इनने तो 20-25-30 गाने निकाले हुए, you know. But like for example, let's look at Tahaji. I don't think he has an album. He might have an EP or 2, but I don't think he has an album. But like nobody goes there being like, इसने album तो निकाली, ये तो कोई थकड़ा.
Yeah, अच्छा
like, nobody does that, right? So I think it's a sense of, it feels like it's a kind of graduating thing that artists have to do to be considered serious, at least in the artists fraternity.
In Pakistan though.
Everywhere.
Because I don't know if it's
in
the
Pakistan
same.
Specifically.
I don't know if it's the same in the West. Like,
maybe.
You know, people, actually, if I think about it, in the West, people do always end up with albums. ये सारे जो नए stars भी आते हैं, they do singles, collabs, features, ये वो, leading up to an album. It's always some level of album. बेशक 6 गाने क्यों ना हो.
हाँ, I guess. So, like, but पाकिस्तान में जो मुझे अजीब चीज़ लग रही है वो ये कि जो albums निकली हैं, aside of like Anjum's album, I don't know who has gone in and like remembers most of the songs of every album.
Yeah.
And I feel like I think the trap that artists may fall into is, does the album have like a body of work that you wouldn't release independently, or is it just like a body of 10 really great songs with some common theme? And I feel like maybe part of what happens is that in the rush to build an album, you put out a few songs that on their own as singles will not do as well, and then the whole thing does not go as far as it should. That's my theory. Talal's album is the exception to that, right? Which is like you could release each of these songs independently and it would still work. And like that's why it's so great. Like
for which then the question arises, why make an album? If all the songs individually are good and people are fine with singles, what is the point of an album?
Yeah. I think it's very much a pushna chahiye. Talal, come to the podcast. But I think I get the feeling that it's a way to kind of cement your place.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like what makes you see. If you're, for example, ये ऐसी बात है कि this is the musician's master's degree. You know, कि आप corporate job के लिए apply कर रहे हैं, आपका graduate degree है. Does it actually open up doors? Maybe not. But like once you have one, if you're considered two equal people, one comes in with a graduate degree, one doesn't. You're like, okay, one person is more qualified. So I feel like it's the same thing. You're applying for a deal. One person has 2 albums. One person has 20 singles. You will go with the person that has 2 albums, maybe. That's
I think an interesting experiment. If 2 people have the exact same number of songs and perhaps amount of success, sab same, right. But one person has blocked things out into albums and one person is just like singles. So what's the difference in perception?
Right. And I think an album is harder to construct. I think this you and I can agree on.
Yeah.
If you actually think that there's a thematic connection between your songs, then an album is harder to construct. You have to construct it over a longer period of time. You have to release it together. You have to sit on it for longer. There's more moving pieces. All the songs have to be mixed together, mastered together. Like they have to sound like a single body of work. So it's harder to make. The trap is it's harder to make, but are you making it in a way that actually improves the whole thing, or are you just creating
or is it like a collection?
Illusion of an album? Is it just a collection, right? Is it like a fancy playlist, or is it an actual different type of body of work?
Yeah.
And I think abhi itni albums nikal rahi hain that people may be incentivized to just make an album. कि 4 गाने मैंने भी निकाल दिए, 4 गाने मैंने भी निकाल दिए, as opposed to making something that is like independently, just like every song stands out for its own. And yet still it's a body work. That is the real challenge.
Yeah, because also making an album works against जो हमने पिछली कई episodes में बात की है about how गाने बनाना आसान हो गया है and people are connecting online and volume of singles बढ़े जा रहा है. An album is a bigger commitment. Like Talal made an album, 10 गाने हैं जी, Talal is not a singer.
Right.
तो Talal has to get like 10 other people, उनको coordinate करो, schedule करो and not release anything until all of that is done. क्योंकि एल्बम तो एल्बम एक साथ आएगी
एंड दे ऑल हैव टू कनेक्ट लाइक मेलोडिकली दे हैव टू कनेक्ट लाइक ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि बिल्कुल ही डिफरेंट रेंज हो बिकॉज आर्टिस्ट का भी तो ये है ना कि गाने बनाना आपने शुरू किए एंड देन यू स्टार्ट लिसनिंग टू समथिंग एल्स अब आपने एक बिल्कुल डिफरेंट तरह की चीज़ बना दी अब वो सेम एल्बम में नहीं आ सकती वो अब अगली एल्बम में जाएगी बिकॉज द एल्बम इज so it's not that while they're making the album they're only working on it, it's just that it's a tougher body of work. So I think it's like it's a declaration of seriousness. And but you have to judge the body of work separately than you can judge like every individual song.
How do you feel about Talal's album? मैंने तो वही गाने सुने हैं which are on the playlist, but I listen to JANI's album more. And
you listen to the full JANI album?
I listen to at least half of it. Because मैंने कल मैंने playlist सुनना शुरू की. I was like ये दोनों गाने बड़े अच्छे हैं even though they're so different but they still seem similar. Maybe because his voice is that connective tissue. As we've talked about, we've accused him of not being Urdu speaking but apparently he is. But he has an accent and that accent I find distinctive. तो वो गाने कनेक्ट हो जाते हैं. बट तलाल के उसमें एक गाने में हसन रहीम है, एक गाने में मानू है, एक गाने में नताशा है.
हसन तो नहीं है उसके एल्बम में.
Hassan, who did I think was it? Not Hassan Rahim then. Somebody else.
Zahoor.
Was there a Zahoor song in your thing? This is JANI.
वो है Bilal Baloch.
Bilal Baloch, yes. Whose name I will always say. And Zohaib bhi hai. So it's like so different. But somehow I feel Talal has because he's been doing this for so long, he has developed a sort of Talal Qureshi sound, even though the gaane can be very different. And that sound has been in so many different songs कि लोगों को भी पहचान हो गई है कि अच्छा जी this is the Talal Qureshi. There is, you can't just have a sound, people also have to recognize it. तो that I find कि चलो जी ठीक है, इसमें मुझे मिल रहा है. But based, हम पूछ सकते हैं तलाल से, लेकिन let's speculate. Why did he make an album? And also with like such varied people.
I think वही वाली बात है ना जो अभी तक हमने की है, which is like it is Talal's been on this industry for so long, he has a sound, right? Like, so now you can have a body of work that is like, okay, this is the distillation of like 4 years of sound. So if somebody comes across Talal's profile from India or the UK, अब वो जाते हैं पहले कभी नहीं सुना तलाल को, वो एल्बम ही सुनेंगे ना, or they listen to whatever your top songs are, but they will go listen to the album. They won't listen to like 3 singles because it's hard to tell. I think as an artist, it is hard to communicate what sort of music you are making without a body of work, right? Because one song won't do it. आप सिर्फ एक गाने से नहीं कह सकते कि भाई ये मेरा काम है. जैसे आर्टिस्ट अपना इलस्ट्रेटर्स, विजुअल आर्टिस्ट अपना पोर्टफोलियो बनाते हैं ना, ये नहीं आपको एक उन्होंने ड्राइंग भेज दी आपको नहीं पता चलेगा लाइक ये सिर्फ एक उन्होंने अपनी बेस्ट चीज़ भेजी है या मल्टीपल तरह के स्टाइल्स हैं उनके. बट अ पोर्टफोलियो सिलेक्शन गिव्स यू एन एबिलिटी टू कम्युनिकेट ऑल ऑफ द एंगल्स दैट यू आर विलिंग टू मेस विद. इसमें जो जॉ वाला गाना है, हाउ गुड इज दैट? Isn't that great?
I didn't know that she was that kind of singer.
I don't think most people did. Like she's just very versatile. Is my understanding. She's like a very good singer. And I think her
proper.
हाँ, वो तो proper singer तो है ही. But I think then her being on this album with Talal changes the tone of the song very much, right? Like it's very much him.
Yes.
You can hear that song and you're like ये दोनों मिलके उन्होंने एक गाना बनाया तो sense बनती है.
That's a smart thing that you said. None of the songs sound like the singer is the person जिसका गाना है and Talal is just producing it. They're all Talal songs. I don't know how you do it. I'm sure कुछ science होगी इसकी, as people say. कि the song is a Talal song despite there being another singer on it.
I think इसमें 2-3 चीज़ें हैं. एक तो ये कि beat is all very, as you said, कि there's a Talal sound that shows up in every beat, right? So how he treats sounds, how the drums sound compared to how the melody sounds, like the instruments that he uses in his like kind of electronic production, how he mixes stuff, that's where the
mix
producer
has to be a big
shows.
part. Yeah.
अच्छा, अब उसमें जो melodies हैं, Talal doesn't write all of them, right? The singers will come in and they'll put in their part of it also. But I think all of the melodies are coming from the same scene, right? Manu है,
I just looked at the people.
अच्छा, अब ये सब लोग हैं, ये लोग तलाल के साथ वैसे अपने गाने भी करते हैं.
Yes.
So obviously there is a relationship where their songs show up in like Talal stuff, Talal's effects show up in their songs. And so now when they, for example, if somebody comes in with a melody and Talal is producing it, it does not sound out of place. Which would be, for example, it might be different if Talal goes in और कल वो अली अज़मत का गाना बना दे. That might not happen. Which is not to say that Ali Azmat would be not the same quality of singer as any of these people. It's just that relationship maybe doesn't yet exist. Which is why kind of extensions to new artists are always interesting. So जब तलाल ने गाना किया था वो आतिफ के साथ, कोक वाला, क्रिकेट खिलाएगा आतिफ और फारिस वाला, right? So that was really interesting because it suddenly is like a new, how do you extend this sound to a completely different space? And I think we've talked about like why is an album important? It's important because it captures the progression of this entire space so far. यानी आप तलाल की एल्बम सुनेंगे तो आपको समझ आएगा कि अच्छा ये पूरा सीन गाने किस तरह बना रहा था, क्या इनकी कलेक्टिव साउंड क्या थी, right? And this is told through his version कि like he is retelling the story of like how 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 artists come together and make music, and this is kind of his read of it and how they have pushed his career forward. But then, for example, like Manu's album from the same scene will have a different story to tell and slightly different players that will affect kind of his sound. So I think that's what it kind of represents. So if you go back to this 5 years from now, you will be able to see kind of how the scene progressed. If you go to this album, if you go to Anjum's album, if you go to JANI's album, right? तो आपको पता होगा कि अच्छा ये एक moment in time था, फिर हम इससे आगे गए.
Yeah. Then now we have a segue. JANI's album reminds me of Anjum's album a lot. I don't know if Anjum is featured on the album. He does get a shout out. But yeah. एक तो one thing I felt with JANI was like very reference heavy album. So yeah, everything.
बहुत reference heavy.
everything is a reference to something. I was like, DB Cooper bhi aa gaye, and that was shocking. Chalo John Wick bhi aa gaye, sab ho gaya, but Talal Anjum ko bhi reference kar diya. But I don't know if I've heard his other songs. They're not usually this reference heavy. बात से बात निकल रही है, to the point where the second JANI song that you had on the playlist, I had a tough time figuring out कि इस गाने का मकसद क्या है. Picture Me, right? I wasn't sure what this song was about because there's so many things. और बात से बात निकली जा रही. I thought, is it about like failed relationship? Is it about being a star? Is it about imposter syndrome? Is it about just competition in the music? Or is it about all of it? Which means, you know, if your song is about everything, then your song is kind of about nothing. तो वो मुझे ज़रा मुश्किल हुई उस गाने में. But I liked it. I think this, if we go through the thing, it's JANI and Umair on these two songs, and therefore they are, I should not every song. Some of them are Super Duper Sultan. Obviously, this is YSU. Mishal Shafi Pius Arthur. That's a heavy name. But mostly Super Duper Sultan, some with Umair. I like the Hassan Rahim song. First time I'm hearing somebody, Anaz. I don't know who this person is.
Anaz he's part of this universe. लेकिन वो हाँ YSU में है, but YSU के YS के अलावा जो बाकी U है उसके साथ.
अच्छा EYSU. or would it be YSEU? Which do you prefer?
What is E?
Extended.
Oh, extended.
Yeah.
EYSU.
हाँ चलो ठीक है.
Have you seen this वो unexpected Pakistani things जो पेज है ना? उसमें एक मुस्लिम शावर ऐड है जिसमें 4 लड़कियां होती हैं. हाँ. Like, आप जब बाहर जाते हैं तो आप क्या करती हैं? टॉयलेट पेपर इस्तेमाल करती हैं, and then all 4 of them say ew together.
I'll try and find it and put it in here.
Me too. Why be ashamed? Even today, millions of people use toilet mugs. Toilet mugs? Ew! That too in Paris?
Too good. So I think anything YSEU we should avoid for that reason, because
sure. हाँ. Even though EY gives me PTSD flashbacks, but चलो ठीक है. Yeah. So this song, this album has that, because Anjum ki album na. That's another thing I had. I'll come back to it. Anjum ki album had like a vibe. This is like a whole cohesive body of work, and सारे अलग-अलग topics भी हो रहे हैं. There's like battle rap songs. There's like subject-based songs. सारे सब कुछ है. इसमें भी I feel like I will find that. Definitely, he feels like he comes across as like a less mature artist than Talal Anjum, which perhaps might be my perception because I know that Talal Anjum is more mature, and maybe I'm just adding that to it. But also, one thing I noticed was that he said he's inspired by TA, but TA is not on the album. TY is, but TA is not on the album. And my mind ना मेरी एक scenario बन गया कि Talal Anjum ने कहा कि नहीं bro, अभी तुम करो, अगली वाली पे आऊँगा, अभी बड़े भाई की तरह. उसने an imaginary scenario I created.
यूनुस आ गया तो फिर अंजुम क्यों नहीं आएगा? It's जोखे भी है, यूनुस भी है. So I don't really see a reason why like Anjum wouldn't show up if the other two have showed up.
I was surprised that he didn't show up, to be honest. Yeah.
It's the reason I like this album is because JANI I've classified as this sort of pop rap bucket. Like he sings kind of hummable rap songs, and they're all very similar, right? Like the one criticism against JANI is like it is very, you know what to expect. आप जाते हैं कभी स्टोरी आती है, but you know the songs are going to work kind of similarly.
They won't surprise you.
Mostly, they don't surprise you in terms of construction very much.
Yeah. Sure.
But these first 2 songs are different. Like he is going, matlab wo full Talal Anjum, Talal Yunus, right? Like he's just kind 100%. Of being very lyrical. There's no kind of humming to it.
Yeah.
It's very different. So it feels like a kind of.
I also like that it wasn't. I also like it wasn't Shairana, which is a complaint-ish, borderline complaint thing that I've had with the Karachi rap scene, and where this perhaps goes too far in the reference by reference, building on reference thing. But perhaps I prefer this to the Shairana vibe of it. कि भाई मुश्किल सखील उर्दू अल्फाज आना शुरू हो जाते हैं
वो. और फिर आई थिंक इसमें आई डोंट हैव अ प्रॉब्लम विद इट, बट इट्स गुड टू डू समथिंग डिफरेंट. And I think
Exactly,
here the
exactly.
other thing is that it's not just like hustle bro, you know. It's like matlab there's some kind of different things. Like the good thing that happens from the reference game baat se baat nikalne wali is even if you don't understand it, it is doing something differently. Even if the themes are similar. And so I think I like just the fact that he is like has you know is bold enough to put out ab main nikal raha hu 10 गानों के album. There is the kind of artisticness to it, right? They're all connected in some way. Uska like Johnny's artwork and stuff like that. There's always like you can see that there is some thoughtfulness behind it. Like he is not just churning out stuff without kind of any sense of aesthetic
direction or aesthetic.
A direction, So that's what I like about it. So I've actually a lot of his album I have not gone through in as much detail to be able to put it in. So I expect more of his songs to show up in the next playlist.
हसनैन वाला गाना भी अच्छा है.
These ones with Umair are interesting primarily because they are so unlike his previous work. And so I think it signals so much development.
Because in the previous select playlist, जानी के गाने आते थे. And मैं सुनता था और मैं आगे बढ़ जाता था. I think I haven't picked a JANI song for several months now. Because I was like, हाँ ठीक है, this is a JANI song, we understand, अच्छा गाना है ये वो. But some other person has done something different ये कोई बात करने के बारे में. But here, as soon as I heard it, I was like, अच्छा ये वाली तो we need to talk about this because they are different in some way.
They are very much. And like he is 23, you know. So मतलब
very offensive to say this. मतलब
आपकी उम्र तो नहीं बोली मैंने.
नहीं, why is he successful at such a young age? वो वाला scene.
So to see this level of development, right? और वो कहे कि भाई मैं अपनी पूरी एल्बम निकाल रहा हूँ इतने सिंगल्स के बाद अब वो अपनी एल्बम निकाल रहा है पूरी. ऐसे पहले ये this is you know what's crazy? This is his third album or second album plus one EP. So this guy is not coming slow.
सही है ना? This is great. I like this sort of. The problem with this sort of output is there is a risk कि वही वाली बात ना आप population बढ़ा रहे हैं तो average नीचे आ रहा है of quality. But JANI के उसमें I think I remember this from when he was Bol JANI and he came on Kazi के podcast के episode and that episode like exploded, right? And you could see in the comments that the people coming there weren't Kazi fans, they were JANI के fans. It was like 2-3, this is right after COVID. So, you know, he had that like dedicated fan base for some reason, which is obviously his work, and his quantity of output is not bringing down his quality clearly. मतलब काम में जा रहा है, he is doing more work. The youngster boys उसको is because they're also very picky. They don't do like features or collabs with everybody, right? Which I'm sure causes some, you know, angst in the scene as well because rap में वाली tension तो होते आती है. JANI को वो consistently they work with him.
शुरू से.
Yeah. So that really is all these things. Plus, I mean, हमें भी उसके गाने अच्छे लग रहे हैं. So all these things are indicative of his output being a lot isn't affecting the quality of said output.
Yeah.
Similar to Manu.
I think he puts out a lot of songs that are not very different from his previous work.
Fair.
Right? Which is, that can be a criticism. Not that they are bad, it's just that they don't really develop that much, which is okay. So the fact that he's like, okay, ab main album bana raha hu, this will be different, it's like a way to kind of signal, okay, this is a new chapter, either the end of a chapter or the start of a chapter. You can see his development, you're right, which is that he puts out stuff so quickly. He has about 175,000 listeners on Spotify, and this is my rant time. JANI kabhi Coke Studio pe nahi aayega, kabhi kisi corporate show pe nahi aayega, kabhi
He
kisi
mentioned
ad
this
mein
in
nahi
a
aayega.
song. Yeah.
2.25 लाख मंथली लिसनर है इस बंदे के. ठीक है, कंसिस्टेंट अमाउंट ऑफ वर्क, 23 बैंकेबल एसेट कभी नहीं आएगा. क्यों? बस दैट इज द ओनली reason.
When he said this in the song, I was like, we should look at Xerox thing on the call. We should talk about this. I'm glad खुद ही से बात आ गई. Yeah.
It makes me so angry because it just means that the people that are showing up is just like the people that are making the decisions of who shows up in what production are purely winging it. Right? There is no thoughtfulness.
When you don't need to wing it. सही है. पहले तो हो सकता है आपके पास डेटा ना हो. अब तो है ना.
अब है.
Yeah.
And it is so clear and consistent, right? Like for example, someone like JANI, ये नहीं कि एक गाना निकाला, एक hit हो गया, चला गया. You know, that's not what's happening here. For 3 years, this guy has put out a song once every month, including 3 albums, has 175,000 people that will show up.
Yeah.
to listen to his music every month.
Yeah.
As you saw, वो आपने काजी की वीडियो के साथ बताया कि किसी और के मेन चैनल पे इसकी फॉलोइंग आती है उनको
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's so, for me, the fact that the stunners are everywhere, but now this tells you how lazy the entire system of
Do you think it's a lack of
curation
money
is.
though? Do you think that जैसे तुमने पिछले वाले एपिसोड में जो बात की थी कि there can only be one female artist who is doing all the ad campaigns, like season आता है female artist का, ठीक है, male artist में there's a bigger variety usually, but I was thinking कि these things are also sometimes because there is a perceived lack of money associated with the perhaps risk appetite कि भाई अगर नहीं पसंद आई तो क्या होगा, हमारे पास इतने पैसे नहीं है टू एक्सपेरिमेंट. इज दैट थिंग ऑल्सो अफेक्टिंग द हिप हॉप सीन कि भाई यंगस्टर्स चल रहे हैं ना, सिर्फ यंगस्टर्स आएंगे बिकॉज देर आर प्रूवन एंटिटी एंड वी डोंट हैव द फंडिंग टू एक्सपेरिमेंट. बिकॉज दिस इज समथिंग अहमर सेड अ व्हाइल अगो, जब हमने अहमर के साथ एपिसोड की थी अबाउट व्हाई द पाकिस्तान म्यूजिक इंडस्ट्री डाइड, वो ही सेड कि भाई हमारे पास पैसा ही नहीं है. ठीक है, मुशर्रफ के टाइम पे हमने सारे पैसे लगा दिए थे म्यूज़िक में, सब बहुत अच्छा चल रहा था, फिर एवरीथिंग मूव टू न्यूज़ और अब सिर्फ न्यूज़ चल रही है. So we don't have the money to move the funding on TV to music. I don't know how accurate this is, but I mean, he knows what he's talking about.
I think probably correct, right? It's probably increased since you last talked to him. Like
Yeah.
there's more to go around. The industry is more solid. But ऐसा तो नहीं है ना कि कुछ जगह बन नहीं रही हिप हॉप की या कोई नए लोगों को लाने की. It's just that ये जो लोग आ रहे हैं, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
That there,
लोग आ
that
रहे
there
हैं.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
There is so much material. Like here's my issue with it. My issue is if your argument is that these people are not bankable, then you are wrong. Because by numbers they are bankable.
Yeah.
They have been the most bankable assets for all this time.
Yeah.
And if there's evidence that people that are less bankable show up, then that implies that there is some
Risk
underlying
appetite as
thinking
well.
problem, right? Risk appetite भी है. So कोई underlying thinking problem या तो आपको पता नहीं. In which case, like I don't know what to tell you. हाँ, क्यों नहीं पता? Right? तब पता होना चाहिए. Like this is not, these are not hidden people. This is not कि भाई 10,000 आर्टिस्ट, 10,000 लॉयल फैंस हैं इस बंदे के और उसको सुन रहे हैं और आपको नहीं पता, चलो that I can like forgive. But ये तो this is like a huge scene from which you have decided actively to be like नहीं हमने नहीं पढ़ना इसमें, हमें नहीं समझना. Either that or there is some semblance of this is like a type of thing that we don't want to dig into. और स्टनर्स तक तो हम चले जाएंगे क्योंकि वहां तक ना गए तो लोग हमें पढ़ जाएंगे
और वो
undeniable है. वो अनडिनाइबल है, बट यहाँ तो कुछ हद तक डिनाइबिलिटी है तो हमने पढ़ना ही नहीं. ये वजह हो सकती है. सो फॉर मी दिस इज
कराची को दीवार से लगाया जा रहा है इज व्हाट जीरा इज सेइंग ऑफिशियली ऑन ये हेडलाइन होगी.
क्लिप की हेडलाइन बना. बट आई मीन इन अ वे यू कांट आर्ग्यू अगेंस्ट इट, राइट? लाइक why is it that someone like JANI has not received like a big corporate deal so far?
Are the people making those corporate deals largely based out of Lahore?
Lahore, Karachi, probably. Karachi में भी होते हैं.
For this, it would mean that they don't have, for my conspiracy theory to work, they can't be in Karachi because then they don't have an excuse.
I think मतलब कराची में भी होंगे, but scene फर्क है ना. Like ये English medium scene नहीं है ना. This is Urdu medium scene. Like I feel that's the divide for me.
This is something we talked about in the पिछली episode with ये इरफान काजी वगैरह, where YouTubers who have huge followings but their content is Urdu medium get less sponsorship, less attention than much smaller creators who are very English medium. And Irfan was like, अगर मैं कल ऑडी चलाना शुरू कर दूँ पाकिस्तान में तो मैं अपनी रेट डबल कर सकता हूँ just because I have an ऑडी. And लोग कहेंगे हाँ यार ईमान. Like the perception game is like out of control.
It is like Moneyball का भी जो worst version है ना. Like it is before Brad Pitt meets Jonah Hill, there is a caricature that they make, and that caricature would be an improvement on this scene.
Yeah.
That is what I'm pissed about कि भाई ये बंदा ऑडी चलाता है. ये भी नहीं कि इसके गाने का स्टाइल ठीक नहीं है, यानी वो कैरेक्टर ये होता है ना कि भाई इसके गाने का स्टाइल ठीक नहीं है, हमें लगता है कि इसका फैशन ठीक नहीं है, इसके एस्थेटिक नहीं हमें समझ आते. लाइक चलो you are, if you were using attributes about their work that were not related to their eventual outcome, but at least they are still attributes about their work. यहाँ तो वो भी नहीं है ना. यहाँ तो सिर्फ ये है कि
वाइब की attributes.
समझ नहीं आया हमें. हाँ. नहीं, ये नहीं चलेगा. And I think this is just, it's so lazy. right? It's just that basically we are stuck in a way we are only able to see the world in the way that we know how to read it, right? अगर आप इंग्लिश मीडियम उसमें दुनिया में हैं तो आप उर्दू मीडियम तक पहुंचने की कोशिश ही नहीं करते. हल्की सी भी कोशिश नहीं की आपने, क्योंकि आपने हल्की सी भी कोशिश की होती तो ये 2 लाख 3 लाख 4 लाख 5 लाख लिसनर जिनके इनको ढूंढना मुश्किल काम नहीं है अब. This is not difficult. And so you can make kind of very intelligent, smart bets. But we don't make them. And so there's a reason why there is a sense of anger in these songs. Like वो बार बार आता है.
Yeah.
We are up against it. Right. वो इसी वजह से है. Because it is so clear to them as it is to me and you. कि आप जो मर्जी कर लें नहीं खुलेगा आपके लिए वो दरवाजा, you know.
And is sponsorship money or corporate, attention, like, can you do without it?
Not really. Like only if you're the stunners, right?
Yeah.
So आप इसको देखो कि these guys, their way of making money are concerts, which require some level of corporate money, but I'm sure they get some concerts. Or YouTube. YouTube pays you roughly, ये शायद इरफान ही बताएगा आपको, it's like $1 per 1,000 views.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is, sure, it's like reasonable, but it's not enough to, it will cover the costs of music production, but not much more than that.
Yeah.
If you are doing really well, if you're making
Millions.
really good songs,
Yeah.
it will cover the cost of doing the work. And that's basically about it. लेकिन उसके बाद तो सब corporate ही है ना. That's where all the money is made. That's when like somebody pays you to put up an Instagram post. That's where all the low cost, high money making happens, right? So ये margin भी देखना है ना. यानी आपने producer hire किया, producer को आप 2-3 लाख रुपए दोगे पर गाने के, right? और कम वीडियो बनाई, like 1 लाख से 20 लाख के दरमियान कहीं भी हो सकती है वीडियो. आपने आर्ट वर्क बनवाया, आप किसी को 50,000 से कम तो नहीं दोगे अगर बिल्कुल ही कोई कॉलेज स्टूडेंट टाइप आर्ट वर्क हो. अच्छा, फिर आपने कोई एड रन किए या आपने कोई मार्केटिंग की या आपने कोई मैनेजर हायर किया, मैनेजर का कट अलग होगा. आपने डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर रखा हुआ है अपना कोई, उसका कट अलग होगा. अगर जो स्पॉटिफाई पे आपका डाल रहा है वो डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर रहा है. अगर आपने कोई मैनेजमेंट कंपनी रखी हुई है जो आपको हेल्प करती है उधर ले जाने की, राइट. अब इन लोगों को सिक्योरिटी वगैरह भी चाहिए होती है. आपकी इक्विपमेंट है, आपने घर में रखना है, स्टूडियो रखनी है, स्टूडियो को इक्विपमेंट लेते रहनी है, विच इज़ लाइक $1,500 $2,000 easy of just every piece of equipment that you get that you need to keep building, right? And so you either need to put the capital in upfront or rely on somebody else and use their studio and are stuck with it. So every song लाखों में हर गाने की प्रोडक्शन वैल्यू है. अब ये कि आप एल्बम बना रहे हैं, भी 10-10 20-20 गाने आपने बनाने हैं एक साथ, उनको रखना है. इन द मीन टाइम यू हैव टू कीप पेइंग पीपल so that they remain afloat while you put out your album. अच्छा, अब लाखों में तो आप आ गए, ठीक है, आपने YouTube में मिलियंस बना लिए व्यूज़ के, तो वो that will just cover the costs of the album itself. And then when you do a concert, you will pay your backing band or your sound वाला, वहाँ भी cost काफ़ी होती है. It's the corporate stuff which is high margin. जैसे आपने एक गाना बनाया, आपको 2 मिलियन मिल गए, 3 मिलियन मिल गए, या आपने एक इंस्टाग्राम पे वीडियो डाली, उसके कई लाख रुपए मिल गए आपको. Like that's the kind of low cost stuff where you don't have to invest in equipment, you don't have to invest in people, there's no running cost, you are just making money. That's when you start actually making a profit. And so what this means is that anybody that is not fitting into that scene and all you are doing is covering the costs over YouTube, then unless you are the stunners, you are not making a profit.
Yeah. I think perhaps even the stunners really became big after their corporate push. Because like they had that underground vibe everywhere, right? Concerts वगैरह जितने भी थोड़े बहुत होना शुरू हुए थे, young stunners थे, बहुत गाने आ रहे थे उनके. But I think their real explosion and respect, quote unquote, in the masses was after the corporate people brought them on and then their talent was visible to a much huger audience, right? That wasn't necessarily seeking out that sort.
And then
of
they can
music.
reinvest, right? Then they can reinvest in like a grand music video that would go India में जाके उनको लगेगा कि अच्छा, yeah, these guys are serious, you know, it's not like somebody किसी ने अपने घर में कोई वीडियो बना ली, कुछ कर लिया. So then they have studio equipment, their songs immediately sound better, they have access to different अब तो ये भी है ना कि आप sounds online खरीद रहे हैं. So you have these sample libraries that you have access to. All of them cost money. Suddenly you have money. You can invest in a different class of sounds that people don't have access to. You can buy rights to them exclusive. अभी AP Dylan के गाने के साथ क्या हुआ है? उसने नॉन एक्सक्लूसिव राइट लिए हुए थे एक बीट के जो किसी और गाने में भी था. लोग पढ़ गए उसे.
Oh,
So
really?
when you have more money, you can invest in a new image that only you have, that other people don't have. You don't have to rely on these like shared assets. So
like
there's
we were
a
talking
reason.
about पिछली दफा कि you can get like a dedicated producer like a Talal rather than ऑनलाइन ये बीट्स लेने वाली चीज़ जो है, you can have somebody like bespoke. हाँ, that was man Talal.
You can have somebody bespoke, you can have someone working for you on your timeline. Like basically you have to run a business, right?
Yeah.
तो अब अगर आपको वो हाई मार्जिन अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलती नहीं है, वही वाली बात है ना, कतर एयरवेज जहाज चलाए लेकिन उसमें बिजनेस क्लास हो ही मत, आप सिर्फ इकोनॉमी पे जहाज चलाए जा रहे हैं, it will just be like barely afloat. It is like when you have those like high paying passengers that when you actually like have a business. यहाँ पे वो है ही नहीं. And I think the reason that they are shut out from it is just bias.
Perception.
You can argue what that bias is against. Is it the Urdu medium bias? Is it a hip hop bias? Is it a Karachi bias? That's up to you and to figure out exactly who are the players in every situation. But it is straight up bias, and that pisses me off.
Yeah.
Sorry, and rant.
No, it's great. I love it. अब this is another one of those opportunities जहाँ एपिसोड की टाइटल में अपर केस में rants हम लिख सकेंगे. I did that last time. I was like, oh, this is something I do, don't I? मुझे खुद अपने बारे में अच्छा यार मैं करता हूँ ये. But we will do it again now with full conscience. Yeah. Apart from this, listen to Jani's album. It's great. And I will continue to listen to it. The Zain Zohaib song. The Zain Zohaib song that's towards the end of the playlist. Generally, I'm kind of mid on qawwali, but this song, I was like, is this a Nusrat song? Because the vocals and sort of, I suppose, the selection of the lyrics as well are so Nusrat. Like, it could be a Nusrat. More Nusrat than perhaps a Rahat attempt. And I was like, oh shit. You know, this is like a very, like, maybe by design, has Nusrat ki influence undeniable in the qawwali scene post Nusrat. But did you get that, and do you have any idea as to why that might be?
I don't know. I have one theory, which is that more than their previous recordings, I think this one is more airy. यानी इसमें आपको लगता है कि वो कमरे में गा रहे हैं, थोड़ी सी live recording है, as opposed to them like being right next to a mic. Okay, studio recording, it feels like it is kind of a live recording. I don't know if that's actually true, but the effect in the recording is that there is like you are in a room with them.
Yeah.
And it's almost, less polished is the wrong way of doing it, but ऐसे लगता है जैसे कि थोड़ी ज़रा पुराने स्टाइल की रिकॉर्डिंग. नुसरत क्यों नहीं है ना कि like नुसरत को कमरे में स्टूडियो वोकल बूथ में बंद करके अलग से रिकॉर्ड नहीं किया बाकी लोगों से.
Yeah, everybody was there.
Right. So I get a feeling that maybe it's that kind of sound. So it has this sort of nostalgic maybe vibe, right? Or it's like it harks back to this old style. But you're right, which is कि if you are singing qawwalis now, there is a Nusrat influence.
Yes.
आप जो मर्जी कह लें, right? Unless you are actively going out of your way to prevent that from happening, there is a Nusrat influence. It's like, are you making rock music after the Beatles? Yes, there is a Beatles influence. आप माने ना माने है. So Beatles haters don't come at me. So I think yes, guaranteed that is true. The thing about Zain Zohaib is वो कोई गाना निकाल लें. For me, I've never listened to one of their songs and be like, नहीं ये ठीक नहीं, like ये बुरा. It is just like the consistency of their quality is crazy. Like basically if they put out a song, I'm like, हाँ ये तो आ ही रहा है ना. Like I've never come across any one of their songs and feeling like it doesn't fit. And I think they are modernizing this like old genre in such a refreshed way. And it's so it's modern, it's well done, it's well polished. Like गानों की length, like ये अब 30 मिनट वाली कवालियाँ नहीं है. They are switching the old model. लेकिन है कवालियाँ. आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि ये कवाली नहीं है. So they are not changing the genre. They're not taking qawwali training and singing something else. They are literally singing qawwalis, but they are modernizing them in terms of how they present them, in terms of how they're recorded, in terms of quality, in terms of output. Right? They are putting out a song every few weeks, every few months. So it's just great. I think like to see that कि ये भी साथ साथ चल रहा है. And we have this new analysis that will be on Hamnawa sometime soon, which is we looked at all the genres in the industry. And which is heard a lot, right? अब हम hip hop पे बहुत बात करते हैं. Hip hop is such a small fraction of the overall listening, which is all pop. But the second biggest genre is this neoclassical genre, which is like taking some neoclassical or neo-traditional, which is basically taking ये folk music, qawwali music, या ये कोई classically trained alap singer जो कोई थोड़ा सा popish गाना गा रहा है. That is the biggest genre after like straight up Atif Aslam style pop. And so that they are such a consistent important player in this for me is really really important. अब मैं सनम मारवी का अकाउंट ना Spotify पे बहुत फॉलो करता हूँ because I think सनम मारवी is just like it's her, for example, her coke music is just so good and so different than everybody else around her. It's like wohi waki Abda Parveen style, but modernized in some way. But if you look at just the work that is put out under her name on Spotify, it is like these kind of janky recordings, and
You
they're not
mentioned
like
this, yeah.
quite well constructed.
Quality is not as
and so
good.
that hurts, because you know that you have seen this person recorded well,
Yeah,
and then you are seeing this person not recorded well, and you realize that it is just being wasted. So Zain Zohaib, for me, like basically, it's easy to take them for granted. कि भी like सब गाने निकालने तो ये भी निकाल रहे होंगे, you know. But it's what they are doing is a really big service to the industry, which is that they are taking something very difficult to preserve and actually preserving it without making a hoo-ha of it, right? मतलब ऐसा नहीं है कि वो आपको कह रहे हैं कि देखें हमने कव्वाली म्यूजिक की हिस्ट्री को बचा लिया, we are the first कव्वाली बैंड जिसने कुछ कर लिया, ऐसा कुछ नहीं हुआ यहाँ.
Yeah.
They are literally just, they're going about their job and they're doing it, and they are doing it really well. The same reason that like Ali Sethi and is interesting to the world and to Pakistanis also, because he's again taking classical training, modernizing it, preserving it in some new different way. ये लोग भी उसी लेवल का काम कर रहे हैं, बस ये थोड़ा क्योंकि कव्वाली है और इतना मतलब इसमें सिंथ नहीं है, you know, तो आप इसको इतना सीरियस नहीं लेते, कोई फ्लैशी वीडियो नहीं है. But actually what they are doing is very difficult because there's no precedent for it. Like Rahat is the only precedent, and Rahat is not preserving that original qawwali.
Rahat's not doing qawwali as much,
Rahat is preserving a Bollywood Bollywood form inspired by qawwali, which again,
and Rahat
nothing.
Ki qawwali is mostly when he's like doing live performances. It's not in like his studio outputs.
Right.
Yeah.
So, for me, what these guys are doing is like kind of monumental in that reason. And like probably we will look back at it 10, 15 years from now and realize just like the level of work that they have accomplished. Because abhi, I don't think people realize kind of how big it is. Like this level of preservation of some sort of traditional art form has only happened on coke. Nowhere else. कहीं और हुआ ही नहीं. कैसे हुआ है? Coke में हुआ है, थोड़ा बहुत Dream Journey में हुआ है. Dream Journey is like, they do quite a bit of it. Are you familiar with Dream Journey?
No.
Dream Journey is this like amazing YouTube channel run by a number of people, including Musab bin Noor, who has written for Hamnawa before, who we like.
Okay.
Anytime I need something serious written with actual knowledge, I ask Musab to help write this for us. And so they record lots of qawwali artists in their homes or in their settings. तो जैसे उसमें ये फरीद अयाज, अबू मोहम्मद, उनका ना मतलब उनकी रिकॉर्डिंग हुई स्टेज पे नहीं, कमरे में बैठ के उनको रिकॉर्ड कर रहे हैं. And so it has a kind of really great archive of this stuff, like well recorded, well put together. So Dream Journey पे हुई है, Coke पे हुई है. It's hard for me to think of other things like this. एक दो और अभी कैफे प्याला नहीं, अमृत प्याला I think is one of the other new things that are happening. ये जो उस्ताद नूर बख्श का जो दानियाल अहमद कर रहे हैं, होनिया नूनी पे, right? Like all of that preservation, like this level of thing, there's a handful of them, you can name them all. And so for me, Zain Zohaib are doing that, but they are doing it for their own stuff.
It's not like a archival sort of or an academic sort of preservation exercise. It's more like preservation through practice and perhaps some evolution.
Right. And it is the practice that they are putting forward, not the idea of preservation. क्योंकि यहाँ पे भी होता है ना कि academic style English medium लोग चले जाते हैं. अब लोग कहते हैं अब हम यहाँ पे now we are making history, we are doing preservation, हमें grant मिल गया. Like there is none of that hoo-ha. It is simply just this work is important, we will do it, we will do it consistently, we will do it really well, and we will be taken for granted because it's that same type of thing. And so I think for them, I can't say enough good words of this type of work.
I hope they do more. I hope they take up some of the live qawwali performance business as well. I don't know how much they're doing. Most in-person scene तो मैं काफी disconnected हूँ. But hopefully they are active live and they do like gigs वगैरह. Because that I remember that used to be a huge thing in Karachi, at least in the 2000s, where perhaps still is. राहत का कॉन्सर्ट हो रहा है, आबदा परवीन का कॉन्सर्ट हो रहा है, ये वो. No one's looking to listen to like their latest releases. They're looking to listen to that Nusrat adjacent body of work, which was like, you know, world over mashhoor. So these guys could perhaps tap into that vibe and take it to like the next generation.
I think करते हैं,
you know, shows.
उसमें from what I know from their Instagram, like they play quite a bit. अब कव्वाली सीन जो है उनकी भी कुछ ट्रेडिशनल सेटिंग्स होती है ना जिसमें कव्वाली आती है. लाइक कराची में शादियों पे बहुत आती है कव्वाली, लाहौर में भी होता है. अब वो दैट शादी काइंड ऑफ qawwali situation is a very kind of serious, well-known cultural affair. So they can sort of tap into that. अब Hamnawa में या लाहौर में like these traditional venues जहाँ पे थोड़ा open like non-ticketed type events भी होते हैं जहाँ पे लोग आते हैं. So I imagine they are part of that scene. But yeah, I hope so. Like I hope there's a way for that to continue.
Yeah. And I think we can end because we're about at our usual time. But speaking of people taking these traditional practices into the future, bro, Javed Bashir वाला गाना जो है ना, हमारी वीडियो रुक गई है. But can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
What a time to have this stop. Oh, can you hear me? Are you back?
I think you don't know. I can hear you. Yeah.
Javed Bashir वाला जो गाना है, I don't understand. It seems like Javed Bashir is doing a Javed Bashir song, and there is a production behind it, which is a modern production, and they didn't speak to each other while they were doing it. So
मैंने सुना, and I was like, this is awesome. This is good. I don't care what anybody thinks about it. This is 100% going to be in the playlist. Because Javed Bashir is having an Atif Aslam moment, which is he's like, nahin, main, matlab in the sense that it's just like, okay, throw everything else away, burn that bridge. Now we are doing something completely new, right? And then he just does it. Good for him.
Yeah, pata nahi. Because like, I don't know, maybe I'll get used to it. But I was like, ये क्या हो रहा है यार? Is Javed Bashir doing his machine gun alaps? सब हो रहे थे, and पीछे is like full pop music चल रहा है. And I was like, अच्छा.
It's almost, I feel, I don't know if this is the sort of song where once you hear it more, it's definitely jarring. I agree with you there. Like that you don't hear the two sounds together very often, if at all. The question is, if you keep hearing it more, does it begin to make more sense or less sense? And I am not yet decided on where I find. Have you looked at the cover of this song, by the way? The cover art?
I have not.
Okay, I want you to live look at it and please describe it.
Yeah. Oh, is it a movie? Hide the song at playlist, view album, go to show credits. Show credits में आ जाएगा? नहीं.
View album में आ जाएगा. हाँ.
View album, yes. Oh. What?
Please describe what you see on it.
It seems like what could very well be an AI generated greeting card sort of background. ठीक है. Two red, I'm not sure what they are. Two red buildings converging. Beach mein there's a proportionately too tall man and woman silhouette. Not Pakistani. He's wearing a tuxedo. She's wearing a skirt. I don't know. Samne then there's just a cutout picture of Javed Bashir with a mic, and then a cutout picture of some lady with a guitar. I don't understand.
So it is, again, we are purely just describing. I want to do our best job at describing what is in the artwork without even, again, passing a value judgment. This is my favorite thing to do. It's like, agar aap,
here, can you see it? Yeah, there's something. I mean, it's super blurry. My camera. Oh, there it is. There it is.
Matlab, it is like you're on a street and you're seeing the buildings on each side converge. Where there is converging, there is like a flare of light at the back, and then there is what appears to be kind of a Hollywood style man and woman kind of in the middle of that lens flare. Upar the fonts, like love it. It's just like, just a kind of new modern like font for the song title, then handwriting flourishy font for Javed Bashir's name, and then Javed Bashir and his guitarist on two separate ends.
One
wearing black, one wearing white. It's both facing towards the right, not facing towards each other. No, they are facing each other, but the guitar is facing right. So
I think guitarist को flip कर दिया है. It's very likely कि guitarist को बस mirror कर दिया है.
और नीचे it's almost like a disco floor. Right?
Yes, वो तो मैंने देखा ही नहीं.
हाँ, नीचे डिस्को फ्लोर भी है जिसमें बहुत सारे लेंस फ्लेयर टाइप चीजें हो रही हैं, लेकिन जावेद बशीर के पीछे दो रैंडम लोग भी हैं.
Yes, I did notice. There, I don't know, वो बस आए हुए हैं उधर. Hopefully it will focus again. Yes, there it is. देखें आप, जावेद बशीर के पीछे दो लोग खड़े हैं. वो बस बात कर रहे हैं. They were passing through, but
This
Yeah.
is okay. Unqualified. This is amazing.
I feel like you are qualifying it. मैंने ना अपने
think
कैमरा
this
को
is
फोकस
great.
करना ट्रैक मैं सिखा दिया उसको ना, वैसे नहीं करता, करीब से दूर लाना पड़ता है वरना मैं ब्लर ही रहूंगा.
कैमरा भी आपका मूडी है.
या
थोड़ा
My cat
आस्ते आस्ते
made
चीजें बतानी पड़ती हैं.
हाँ but
No,
yeah
but this
yeah
song is great. I'm really glad it exists. It makes me
Alright.
happy every time I listen to it.
were you surprised I picked it in my mentions or were you like expecting कि कुछ तो होगा?
Is you texted me, let me read out the exact text. You said, Javed Bashir, I am concerned about. So
Yeah,
I
all
think it's
valid.
great. Good for him
Yeah.
because I think, again, what I am feeling good about is that it is an artist that is exploring something new in a very,
Sure.
very different way.
Sure,
And so I
sure.
feel like that's a way of kind of staying relevant. Maybe more people listen to this. And Javed Bashir is a kind of innovator, right? Like Mikalas and band.
Yes, yes,
Dino
yes.
se aage le jao. Like he is kind of, that's his game. His game is taking his sound and kind of innovating on it. And he's still doing it, which is like good for him.
Yeah. Then good for him, really. I also liked him in that Pepsi song with Heather, where he wasn't in the video, but I think he was in the music. Mein he was there.
Oh, really? Okay, I haven't heard.
Yeah. Heather wala jo gaana, Heather और Rosio wala, where they did the video. I'm a big भी थी शायद उसमें Heather Rosio.
ठीक है. ये पुराना वाला. अब कुछ
Couple-
महीने हो गए हैं. हाँ,
Yes, a year.
समझ गया.
तो उसमें he was there but he wasn't in the video obviously. Video में बच्चे थे, but that he fit into the song, you know. So I think what he needs, like I'm pro Javed Bashir experimental sound, modern sound, much more than if he's just doing like fusion within a Z, but he needs to find the right fit, you know, जो कि तलाल कुरैशी से बात कराते हैं. The one name we have on speed dial. But नहीं, Talal could do it actually, considering what he did with वो कौन सी खातून? नसीबो, yes. देखिए बस प्रेसिडेंट भी मिल गया हमें, एंड प्रेसिडेंट के बगैर तो आपको पता है लीगल सिस्टम में कुछ नहीं होता. Anyway, any other thoughts? Rapid fire,
No.
lightning round.
No other thoughts. Next month we will try to do it even earlier. But like so many albums, I think so much stuff to get through. So
Yeah.
if there's other songs that people like that we have missed, which is very likely possible, I feel like it'd be nice if people could send those in.
ठीक है, तो मैं ऐसे करो, मैं जा रहा हूँ न्यूयॉर्क नवंबर के शुरू में, तुम आ जाओ उधर, बिकॉज इट्स दैट इजी, एंड हम लाइव कर लेंगे. या ठीक है, विल जस्ट रेज द स्टेक्स इवन फर्दर एवरी टाइम. अगली दफ़ा अननोन लोकेशन में. Yeah, I think this is good. I'm going to go. I'm excited about the JANI album. Usually I'm not, excited about stuff, which is just age perhaps. But I look forward to getting into that.
This needs to be this episode title. Usually I'm not excited about stuff.
Rants. Okay, ji. Thank you for listening, watching, viewing, and as always, write to us. We'll be happy to.